So we continue this discussion on the character of the leadership style and, of course, the properties of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi in his role as AmaZulu Prime Minister and that of IFP founder and leader. Professor Mazwe Majola, leadership expert from the Worldwide Institute of Leadership and Development, joins us, including Professor Ndlela Ntshangase, who's also a cultural expert. Gentlemen, a very good evening to you both. Thank you so much for speaking to us.
Good evening. Thank you very much.
All right, so
good evening to you and your viewers. Thank you very much for having us.
Professor Majola, let me perhaps just start with you, because as we've just heard from Mr. Hlabisa on what he hopes to do in honor of the legacy left by Nkosi Buthelezi. We've seen public debate over his legacy. A lot of people arguing that what has been said about him. We saw even President Cyril Ramaphosa saying now is not the time to debate what he did and did not do. So other people have said that people are being ahistorical by praising Nkosi Buthelezi. But I want to talk about these unresolved tensions and how they reared after a second part of the funeral. IFP and AC supporters, rejecting the presence of President Cyril Ramaphosa during the funeral. This uneasy truce apparently began when the co-program director, Minister Lindiwe Zulu, introduced Boniso Duma as the provincial chairperson of the ANC instead of his official position as the leader of government and business, MEC for Economic Development and Tourism. Is this as a result of what has often been called out as conflating state and party?
Good evening, Tsepiso and Obabu Ntshangase, and to the viewers. Well, I think the send-out was a very dignified, respected and befitting one. And one must congratulate the President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, for affording Umntwana kaPhindangene with such dignified official funeral. Yes, in terms of, there would be obviously those tensions. Remember that he was the leader of the IFP, and technically that should have been, in terms of party politics, that should have been an IFP event. But because Mangosuthu was wearing so many hats, so other areas and other stakeholders were involved as well. The address by the president of the country was a great one, was a wonderful one. The attendance of the former living presidents of South Africa was a good one to show that really Mangosuthu Buthelezi was a well-respected person. It was just a mistake when Minister Lindiwe Zulu introduced Siboniso as a provincial ANC, because definitely that would bring tension between the organization. She should have introduced her or him as an acting premier of the province, that he spoke as an acting premier, and that should have been really, people should have been made and to understand that he's not speaking there as an ANC person, but as an acting premier of the province. So obviously that would have been. Yeah,
Professor Ntshangase, there's a reason I ask this. In the inextricable roles, as Professor Majola has just pointed to, that of Nkosi Buthelezi being the AmaZulu Prime Minister as well as the IFP leader. And what was pointed out today was the unifier effect that he had. So the opposite could be said to be true in terms of Nkosi Buthelezi. So is this perhaps part of the problem, people who have challenges with how to view his legacy, the fact that he wore so many hats and was so impactful in both of them or several of those?
Good evening to Prof Majola and to you and your viewers. For me, one will expect such sometimes this confrontation that we saw, that we are talking about. Remember here that Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, as Prof Majola is saying, was wearing many hats, of which one of them was this he's a politician, and then he has his own movement, IFP. So always the political parties, one will expect that the other one will like to dominate if it is their own function. In this case, the IFP sees Mangosuthu Buthelezi as their own. So if you introduce any other person, then they may not take that one lying down easily. So such things will be expected. If in the future, that should happen as well. But however, having said that, for me, if we consider what has been said mainly by the president of the IFP, Velenkosini, as well as the son of Umntwana Buthelezi, Zuzifa, as well as the president, all these three speakers were talking about reconciliation, which was being pronounced and also pushed by the late Umntwana Wakaphindangele. So for me, that is the hope that we will see some of these tensions like this are going to subside. Why am I saying so? Because both within the ANC camp, whenever Umntwana Buthelezi was talking about this reconciliation between the ANC and the IFP, in his words, he will say, let's bury the head tag. And that's what he was going to say. Once he pronounces such things, the leaders of the ANC within the province will come out and say, let us choose the elders of the ANC and the elders of the IFP so that we can start the process of this reconciliation.
Okay, so let me move now to Professor.
I'm looking forward towards that.
Let me move back to Professor Majola. Not much is spoken of if we're going to talk about a 360 degrees of Nkosi Buthelezi's legacy. He joined the anti-apartheid AC Youth League in 1941. So is Umntwana's membership of and participation of the ANC now long forgotten, especially against the context of what happened, just a few years ahead of the dawn of democracy and the role that he played there?
Look, we know that, the Prince of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi was not apologetic when it comes to the fact that he was an ANC member in his origins. Even that when he established the IFP in 1975, it was through some influence and blessings from ANC leaders. So we know that obviously consequently there were some tensions, there were some problems because of politics, power, and we know that towards his end he was really he was at pain wanting to reconcile or talking about reconciliation between ANC and the IFP. It was one of the things that he really wanted, and he desired that at least it would have been the gift for him if he will die when that reconciliation is done. Unfortunately, it has not happened, and now it will take leadership from both IFP and ANC to bury their hatchet and bury their pride and arrogance and try to talk and try to unite and reconcile. we can have different political organizations with the context and the backgrounds that we have between these two parties. But indeed, with good leadership, you can find people who can pull these two organizations together to talk.
Professor Ntshangase, while we look back to look forward, and I'm talking about heritage and lineage here, during the apartheid days, government was responsible for recognizing the status of chiefs, and Mangosuthu Buthelezi's chieftaincy was not recognized until 1957, even though he was chosen, appointed between 1953 and 54, I think. But according to him, it was because the government was wary of his activism. So going forward, is it ideal to have an Nkosi who is politically involved and leads political programs, or who is entirely a monarchist? This is the question I asked Professor Ndlela as well, but I'm just looking at pedigree. What would be ideal?
Well, it depends what kind of a person will that be. But if we are lucky enough to find a person of the caliber of Mangosuthu Buthelezi, then there is no problem. As we have just alluded to that one, that he had many hats. He will change the hat of being a politician if it needs to attend to the affairs of a traditional, as he was a traditional prime minister, very, 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 very smoothly. And when he was now a politician, he will do this very same thing. So for me, I'm saying it is possible. It depends on the caliber of the person that ought to wear such hats. For Buthelezi, he just taught us that it is possible.
I'll just stay with you, Prof, there, and I want to look back, Professor Ntshangase, at the debate around whether or not Nkosi Buthelezi deserved to be in that position, whether this position is hereditary or not, because he has said, or it's been reported, that his hereditary claims about his lineage were disputed, that his paternal great-grandfather, Nqengelele Buthelezi, was the most senior advisor to King Shaka, that the role was actually filled by Ngomani of the Mthethwas, and that several kings in the intervening period did not have Buthelezis as advisors. How important is this detail in terms of his own legacy and that of his descendants, and the role that they could play within the monarchy going forward?
There is Umntwana who spoke he spoke in Zulu. Then he was exactly telling the audience there, those people who attended, that how Buthelezi was chosen. I'm talking about Mangosuthu Buthelezi. It's not him who went to the royal family and begged that since now I am the hereditary of Nqengelele, Umnyamana, Umatole, you name it, and so forth. But it was the Zulu, the royal family members who went towards him, his father in actual fact, according to Umntwana, who spoke, and then said no. What they saw to his father Matole, that he is a brilliant man, then he could occupy such a position. Unfortunately, he did not live long. And then it was his son, Umntwana waga Mangosuthu. It was the royal family who chose him. It's not him who applied for the job. So that was clearly explained by Umntwana, who spoke in Zulu for quite at length. And that's what you were saying. And I believe him as well, because my understanding of history is exactly like what Umntwana was saying. History is history. I don't think that it would be nice then to change the history and so forth. History speaks for itself. So that is my take on that point. If perhaps you were to ask me the next person, the traditional prime minister, for me, I will be saying, it's not going to be an easy one, this one. It's not going to be easy. I think as it is now in these modern times, they only have to make a job description. Having done the job description, and then they will have to find this particular person. I don't know how, but there will be a process to find a suitable person. It may not be Buthelezi. It can be any other person who qualifies to sit, or rather to take the position of being a traditional prime minister for the Zulu nation.
So, Professor Majola, in your mind, what would be important? I'm talking about the royal blood lineage and customs and traditions on who ought to be a prime minister. But also, we've heard reports saying that Senior Prince Zulu of Kwa Minyamanzi has been identified. Reports suggest that it's King Mr. Zulu Buthelezi himself who has identified him as a candidate for the post. Is he an ideal candidate, and are there other people who could be possible stronger candidates? Because we've also heard of Prince Ndlela.
Yes, it's an appointed position. It's not an elected position. So the king will consult with royal families and other advisors to identify the ideal candidate or ideal person. As Babu Ntshangase is saying, of course, they will have to pick up someone who will be relevant and appropriate for the times that we're living in now. And as to who will be that person, of course, we know that it's going to be probably by now. I think the king is having an idea who we want to have. You know, obviously, he always knew that this time will come. So since he took over, he would have been thinking about this thing. Probably not have shared the ideas. But we'll probably we will hear in the next few days or weeks or months as to what are the king's thoughts.
Professor Ntshangase, just to come back to you to understand the role of a prime minister for the AmaZulu nation in contemporary times, and we're speaking about modernization. There are those who are saying that, you know, there are changes that ought to be made. An office that would even see the office have its own budget. But I'm just wondering where the overarching leadership, decision making, I know it's consultative, but where would that lie if such modernization were to occur? What are the pros and cons?
My take on that one is the kings, as they are in South Africa or even in Africa, are here to stay. There are some others who may think that, no, man, we don't want this traditionalists and so forth, but they are here to stay. That's my talk. Therefore, we will always need then the head of a prime minister. And that person, we will expect him to work through consultation with other kings, like Umntwana Wapindangene was doing. You know, there are so many other kings. There is a king, Inkosi, Buthelezi, Inkosi, Ntshangase, Inkosi, you name it, and so forth. And then it's the consultation that will make, in my opinion, we still need that structure of Amakosi led by a very wise Undunankulu being a prime minister. So for me, it's not going to go away. Though in these modern times as it is, so it will not disappear. Kings are here to stay.
All right. And just very briefly, Professor Majola, very briefly, can you just say something about the relevance of traditional leadership in current South African landscape, very briefly?
Well, they're still very relevant. We still have communities who are believing in traditional leadership, and we need traditional leadership, obviously, will understand and interpret times and be able to do things and understand the context that we're living in now.
All right. Thank you so much to both of you. Professor Mazwe Majola, leadership expert from Worldwide Institute of Leadership and Development, as well as Professor Ndlela Ntshangase, who is a cultural expert. Thank you very much to you both for your time.